One of the key notions of sustainability is the triple bottom line, which is the importance of always keeping in mind planet, profit, and prosperity for all. And so as I was preparing this last time, we had about 90 people go through it, I was really trying to get this notion to be as relatable as possible. And it so happened I was listening to the Inafresi. And as I was listening to it, I listened to the 6 principles of our Inafresi, and I thought, that's what it is. That's what sustainability and corporate social responsibility is to many of us here. If we recall, Hinengi, our beliefs, Kultura, our culture, Ilingwahi, our language, Iairi, Ihanum, Zenitanu. And so it's so interesting to hear how the world at large is kind of catching up with us, because we have been at the forefront of our own renaissance here in Guam. And that as an island, as we're sharing with other islanders, while we may have been the most affected by what's going on in climate change and certainly around the world, we can be islands that are the experiment, the living lab, if you will, of what solutions can be found that can be shared with the rest of the world. And so as we listen to our senators and our lawmakers, it is incumbent on all of us to continue to listen to those, to hear those 3 principles, and to assure that as we work through creation of policy to benefit all, that our people, our planet, and the prosperity of our community in the largest sense of that word is always at the forefront. So allow me to start with Senator Clinton Ridgell. Each senator will have 2 minutes to address what their points of view are with regard to sustainability on Guam, specifically with regard to policy making. Senator?
Cannabis. I'm just kidding. Let's just get that out of the way. So, yes, there were some jokes earlier in the thing, and I just want to get that out of the way. I am the author of the bill that became the Cannabis Industry Act. I do think that factors into sustainability in the long run, as it is a cash crop and something that can contribute to agriculture. But really, that's just a small part of what my platform was when I ran for senator. My platform was literally to make Guam green again. And that was green with a lot of different green initiatives. Cannabis is one of them. Another big one is renewable energies and environmental protection. But I wanted to actually spend the time talking today more about another point of my platform, which is agriculture. So I've spoken a lot about agriculture along the campaign trail, and just throughout the last several years, I've been with my friends and everything, really focusing on agriculture. And it was touched upon a little bit earlier by some of the other speakers, that that's truly something that's required to be sustainable. In order to be sustainable, we need to have sustenance. And to have that sustenance, we need an agriculture industry on Guam. We need to be able to grow our own food and produce our own food. Food security is vital to an island that's literally can be cut off from the rest of the world if something should happen to shipping. And we've seen it before. I know the professor from the University of Hawaii, forgive me, I forget his name, but he spoke on the first night. He was mentioning how Hawaii would run out of food in just a few days if the shipping lanes were cut off. I think the same thing holds true for Guam, because we import 90% of our produce. So we don't have food security here. If the shipping lanes are cut off for whatever reason, and we've seen it when ships have been late to Guam because of either the ship was damaged or something along those lines, we begin to run out of food and supplies on our shelves. So that, I think, is absolutely vital to being sustainable. We need to sustain ourselves, and I think the answer to that, one of the answers to that, is to sustain ourselves through developing sustainable agriculture practices. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Senator Ridgell. Senator Régine Biscoe Lee?
Buenas and Hafa Day, everyone, and I just want to take the opportunity to really thank UOG and commend them on 10 years of a conference like this. It's really great for them to create the space for us to continue to talk about these issues and to bring policy and action to the forefront. So I really want to thank the University of Guam and all of you for attending. It's really important that we're all part of this discussion and part of the process. Last term, I introduced a bill to ban plastic bags on Guam. And I was really excited about it, and thankfully, because of my partnership, thank you very much, because of the partnerships with the people in this room, many of our educators, many of our business community, we were able to really make that change and make that difference, that the bill was passed into law, and we're looking forward to the ban next year. But I think that really would not have been possible without the partnership. And so again, I just really want to thank you for being part of that partnership. And also just really trying to educate the community about how tied we are, as Jackie had mentioned, the triple bottom line, how tied environmental policy is with our economics. And we all know that tourism is our #1 economy. We really need to make sure that we have a beautiful island, not just for us to enjoy, but it's a big part of what helps to keep Guam green, as Clint said, and green with cash. And we want to make sure that we bring those things to the forefront. And one of the things that I've been discussing with the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association and other business partners is what Hawaii is kind of implementing. They have green policies as a selling point of their business models and their marketing plans. And we really need to work with our tourist industry, with our environmental stewards to continue to have that conversation. And I think that UOG and the Guam Community College and the Guam Legislature have done a good job with leading by example. In our current standing rules, we've banned styrofoam and the purchase of styrofoam, the use of styrofoam in our facilities, and so has UOG and so has GCC. But we can take that a step further by encouraging our government of Guam to also adopt policies like that. So we're going to be moving in that direction in terms of our upcoming budget and just keeping that conversation going. So I really want to thank each of you for being part of that solution and bringing more green and beautiful environmental policies to our island. So Sizus Masi.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mary Camacho Torres.
Hafa Day, everyone. My name is Mary Torres, and in coming to this conference, I was rather interested in the theme, sustainable then, sustainable in the future. And in some ways, my life is exactly that. At this point in my life, I spend a great deal of my time caring for my 90-year-old mother, feeding her every day, and in that comes the life lessons of how they were sustainable before the war, during the war, and now after the war. So everything about what we're talking about today is something that I live every day in the stories that are told by my mother and in the examples that she teaches me. But also going forward, what do we do as a community to ensure that the lessons that she imparts on me, I then impart on the younger generation, my 10 grandchildren, so that they can then prosper and live on Guam. One of the things the most common stories that I have these days, quite appropriate over lunch with my mother, is food. And it is quite obvious to all of us that most of the waste, or a great majority of the waste that goes into the landfill, is food waste. And when you go driving through our island, you notice that we are abundant with food. We're abundant with wild growing fruit trees, with things that are there for our taking. But these tend to just fall and rot. We have a lot of institutions on Guam, a lot of people that have a lot of food. So I think going forward, what we need to do is really look at what we do with food waste. How do we lax policies to not only allow us to use the food from our backyards to feed people, but how do we use food that is otherwise not suitable for a landfill or the garbage, that can be fed, that can sustain those in our community that are less fortunate, either at a reduced price or free. So there are many things that we can do policy-wise to allow the distribution of food to be better utilized, to not end up in the landfill. And I think as a community, in listening to the lessons that I hear in the stories every day about food on Guam and how we lived, when there was nothing else but our hands and the land. Those are the lessons, the very practical things that are not too far from our everyday existence or our reality. But it will take sound policy to then help us influence the culture. And I think as a lawmaker, that's one thing that I'd like to do is address policy that will help influence the culture to revert back to the ideals of sustainability that the people that raised us, many of whom are still alive, practiced. And it's just a matter of reconnecting. And with that, I'd just like to say that it's there. We're not too far from the base, but we just have to maybe open our eyes and put foot on the base again. Si Dios maasi.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Kelly Marsh Titano.
Buenas and hafide, manana si duus. So with my background is in history, anthropology, Micronesian studies, and cultural heritage studies. And what I wanted to do is put that to work. Oh, is this one not working?
Hello.
Okay. What I wanted to do is put that background to work. So first of all, I want to thank everybody here. It is your passion, it's your dedication, it's your research, and it's your commitment to making a better island that is so important for the entire community and to us policymakers. It's the conversations that we have, it's the data that you develop, and it's your commitment to the community, our environment, and the human community as well that makes a real difference. Some of the bills that I'm working on are specifically from conversations that I've been having with many of you. And it's so important that there is synergy there, that as we are thinking in our offices about what might be good for the community, that we are really being informed by yourself on the real ground experience and the data that you're developing, but also that as we continue to develop the bill, that it's being informed by how your agencies work or your different areas are operating and the needs that you have or that you see. So with that, and putting those two things together, some of what I try to do is I try to find these intersections between culture and the environment, because they are so tied together. The culture and lifeway of our community, and especially the indigenous Chamorro and other Pacific Islanders that are here, they are tied together. The health and well-being of the environment is very much tied to the health and the well-being of the culture and also the cultural identity and sense of self. And that can help us address a lot of social issues at the same time. So for example, one of the bills that I'm working on here is one on the Native Flora Conservation Act. And so I'm looking for opportunities where the government, we are one of the biggest landowners on the island, that we are modeling and putting into practice examples for the community on how to be good conservators and how to be at the forefront of bringing back some of our environment. And I'm also looking for opportunities, as this bill does, as to how individuals can be involved as well. Another bill that I'm working on is developing a task force. We are going to be developing, that's just the way that the world is right now. And so while we're developing, we need to really be sitting down a variety of professionals, cultural practitioners, historians, and others to decide what are those core elements of our island that we really need to save. Federal law, good intentions, they can only get us so far, but we need to have a core group of people working together to really think long-term for the entire island. What are those sites, those cultural, natural, historical sites that need to be saved for our children and our grandchildren? So I think my time is up. I will pass this along to Doris Masi.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Sabina Perez.
Thank you. I think we're in an interesting time because we see a lot of collaboration going on between the executive branch, legislative branches. And definitely in my approach to making policy, I'm looking at all angles of addressing issues. For instance, the landfill. So I was in court this morning talking about how we can end receivership so we can take back control of our solid waste operations. And so this is interesting because we're at a crossroads, right? And it's a time to reflect because we've externalized the environmental cost of our waste. And how much does that cost? So 30 million when I went in, and it went up to 40 million when I went out of the court today. So in thinking about going forward, what can we do today to eliminate that externalized cost? And I think everyone in this room can play a part in this. You know, from the last time I looked, the integrated waste management plan, roughly 50% of that waste that goes to the landfill, which is about 900,000 pounds a day, can be diverted because it's recyclable or compostable. And then, you know, that's a conservative estimate. And then, of course, we have these new ideas of a circular economy. What can we do with a non-biodegradable material? Which is, you know, we can create things. And that's where I think our sustainability lies, is in our imaginations to create new things, or even to reduce the amount of these non-biodegradables coming into our ports, and which we can control. So I feel in a very honored position to be at the table to help shape policies, sitting between Guam Solid Waste Authority, EPA, and the business community, and I invite everybody to be at this table because I think the answers are here in this community. And the other thing I would like to add is, as far as my approach to environmental policies, is looking at the commons. So the commons is basically everything that we share in as a community, everything that the resources that we share in as a community. I think that we could do better because everybody partakes in the resources. Unfortunately, we don't all participate in its protection as much as we should. And that's where I feel I'm very honored to be a part of this legislature, where we can make policies, where we can become more accountable as a government, as a community. And so I'm open to more input from you guys. I definitely have a lot of ideas, but we need to come together to come to the right solution that is sustainable for us. So do as Masi.
Thank you, Senator. Vice Speaker Therese Terlaje.
Thank you very much. As a senator, as a policymaker, I'm really kind of new at this role. It's my third year. I'm beginning my third year now. But before this, I was a biologist, and that was what I studied in college. And then I went to law school. So I really actually very much appreciate that as a policymaker, I feel like we need to do three things. One of them is we need to educate ourselves as much as humanly possible in one person. And that's why I appreciate conferences like this. But I think the education part never really ends. It can't end. Life and our environment is changing daily. I also think we need to, of course, we passed bills, and we're going to introduce bills, and there are a lot of good bills in this term that are going to be coming up. But we also have to see the impact on the environment of every bill that's kind of not the non-environmental bills, just the regular bills, and see what the impacts of those are. So I just want to show you just a very quick list that I made of a variety of things that I think in the work that I've done in the last 2 years impact the environment, and what kind of stances we have to look at while we're policymakers. One is the partnership between the community and our government agencies. We have excellent government agencies. I love to hear the work that they're doing, and they're really excellent. But we need partnership with the community, and sometimes that's the missing link. That's the gap. It's that partnership. And so one of the bills that we did was just this EPA notices. So they're going to put all their notices of all the violations, so you and all of us can follow along. We can see and we can judge, really it's a judging thing, whether they are doing what you think they should be doing. And if not, tell them about it. If you see more importantly, if you see things that they haven't cited anyone for, but you see this to be a continuous violation, bring it to their attention, because you can know now whether they are looking at it or they're not. The other thing is, we're looking at land use and how they use land, and when they allow development. Sometimes it's with conditions, and I think there's a gap in whether those conditions that are set when they allow the development are actually enforceable after the development goes up. And so we are having this same issue in Pago Bay. Some of the promises that were made, we're not seeing them after years of development down there. We've got to protect our land from contamination. We've got past contamination, Agent Orange, and other contamination that is known, that is documented, but now we've got to translate that into something. And I think we've got some opportunities that Congress has where they're funding the health impacts of this contamination. So I think that's one thing we're pursuing. The other thing is we are trying to support our AG's office in getting CERCLA lawyers to come out here to really put, to do the legal work that it takes to get compensation for that contamination, more importantly, the cleanup for that contamination. We also have to oppose certain things, and these are controversial. To oppose bills is not easy. It's very, very hard. It's one of the hardest things because we like each other. We're good friends, and the same thing with the entire community. I know you know this in your work. Sometimes you're going to be opposing one of your good friends, but just a couple examples. There's a bill last year where they were going to mass rezone land that was zoned agriculture in the village of Barragata and Tizen, and rezone that to industrial to create an industrial park. Well, I objected to that because I do not think it's good to mass rezone entire, this was about 40 lots, I think, but 40 lots, 248 acres. And so things like that, right now the process is if you're going to rezone your property, you're going to go in front of the Guam Land Use Commission and you're going to have to prove to the community that the use of your property is not going to adversely impact them. One of the other things I felt it was very difficult was to oppose, there was a bill to divert funds from the recycling revolving fund and divert those funds to one contractor to do one thing, as opposed to, and at the same exact time, Guam EPA was developing these rules and regulations so that they can access the funds finally after years and use them in legitimate recycling programs that we know have been on hold. And I agree with this former senator that this is the stuff we have to do. We have to sort our trash. We've got to stop bringing it in, and we've got to do everything possible to get it out. And so there's just some of the things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. We'll go through a couple of questions before we accept some questions from the audience, but I wanted to bring an experience that we had when we hosted last year Gina Lopez, who is a world-renowned environmentalist and philanthropist from the Philippines. We took her on a tour, and we went to the dump, we went to Farm to Table, and we went to some of the areas in Alahan that are suffering shore and soil erosion. One of the questions as we were going around the island, one of the first questions actually she raised was, what is the percentage of food that you all import? We said, upwards of 95%. She said, what is the health of your community? What kinds of diseases are here? We went through that list, which is a pretty extensive list, but nonetheless it affects every one of us knows someone that has suffered from heart disease, from cancer, from diabetes, you name it. Those are the top diseases. And she said, importing your food is killing you. Importing your food is killing you. And so I raised the question to our policymakers, in light of the many discussions that we had this morning about the importance of either farming for yourself, but for sure having fresh produce to nourish our bodies and our minds and our hearts. What do you plan to do in the next year? You are running for senator already, okay, for next year. What are your plans to assure that our food security, that the availability of our food, that we start investing money in providing incentive for our people to farm for themselves and not continue this 95% dependency that is, in her few words, it's killing us. Senators. Anyone?
Sure. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, agriculture and food security is a big part of my platform. So I am currently working on a couple of bills. I don't want to give away too much yet because I'm still working on it. But a couple of bills that would help encourage farming, local farming, bills that would help encourage agriculture and that I hope would help to develop an agriculture industry on Guam so we don't have to rely on the imports. One of them has something to do a little bit with the Chamorro Land Trust and an idea I have after speaking with some constituents on how we can make it a little easier for people to farm Chamorro Land Trust properties, as well as just some other bills that would help encourage the business of farming.
Senator Torres.
There's an interesting thing going on also with our Department of Education, where because of the nutritional guidelines that are federally created, there's a disincentive for the use of local produce and fruits on Guam because they don't have corresponding nutritional attributes to them, some of the local food. And I think one of the things that we have to look at as a policy is whether Guam can have an exemption to that, where some of the local produce, whether it be local bananas, can then be used in place of apples and oranges or canned food and fruit that is currently in the DOE system. That could be a first start. And I've been trying to get to the root of this and who really is in charge of that, and unfortunately it's a federal mandate. So those are the sorts of things that we have to look at if we're going to rely on local food source, and that's one of the areas that I've continued to look into.
Thank you, Senator. Any other senator?
Just wanted to say
Yes,
real quickly for the Chamorro Land Trust, for example, there was a partnership with Chamorro Land Trust farmers, those who got agricultural lots, and the University of Guam. So the University of Guam was helping them to make their farms productive and sustainable. And I just think we need to renew those types of partnerships because we have the expertise in our community, but we need to get them to the right people and right place and make them very, very practical because the education, when we talk about it, it's not the same as when you show me. And I want to commend the Island Girl Power. They've got their farm plots, and if you've been up there lately, they're very healthy. They've got community farmers in small plots learning from each other. So and the learning part and the community building is really, I admire that. And I'm hoping that we can do that. They're trying to do that in some of the schools, and so that it's at the village level. But I also think that we need to, the Chamorro Land Trust also has programs for aquaculture. It's supposed to put some land aside for these types of industry. And I would like to nudge them to prioritize those types of industries over any other commercial purposes on the land.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Another question that has been raised, I'm sorry, did you have a?
Yes, just quickly. So one of the areas that I've been looking at is trying to figure out how to bring back the dok-dok and the lemai industries, because they have been staples for the islands, and especially in Micronesia, for generations, if not hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so they're very productive, as you know. I think that certain varieties of them at least produce several times a year. And so I think that they could be something that we could be working to reintroduce because the plants themselves are very productive, but then also it's getting back to some of that traditional diet. But I think there are also opportunities. We have a very diverse community. And within that community, for us to be using traditional items like taro, like breadfruit, and so forth, we are in a very food-oriented time right now. So we should be pushing the envelope of creating fusion types of dishes, getting us back into those traditional dishes, having festivals, competitions, cook-offs, what have you, but along the lines of these traditional foods. So that's something I'm looking at. I'm not quite sure how to approach it all right now, but in my long-term vision, that's something that I've talked with Senator Clint, because he has the Department of Agriculture as part of his oversight. So.
Thank you, Senator.
Just one thing. I think the education system, we need to diversify it so that there's a seamless agricultural program, even as young as the elementary school. When I was a teacher, I did introduce permaculture in the high school level, so it'd be nice to see that more vertical alignment.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Actually, just going off of what Senator Perez had mentioned, I know that in the elementary schools, they are implementing these programs in pre-K, kindergarten, and I think it's in cooperation with maybe the University of Colorado or Colorado State University. But they have this program called Food Friends and Mighty Moves. So half of the year they spend talking about sustainable foods and fruits and what the diet should be, and then also in addition, just introducing different types of exercise and trying to give these kids the opportunity to figure out how to have a very healthy and very well-rounded life. And so I think that's really important. I think also what Farm to Table is doing is important. There was a nonprofit organization that I was a part of. I was a board member alongside with Chelsea Munya-Brecht, who is now the director of Department of Agriculture. So I'm looking forward to working very closely with her and moving some of the things that we did with Truman Elementary to begin gardens in schools and those types of things. So I think there are things that our community is already doing. We just need to figure out what has worked and how we can expand that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator. Another question that's come about is the inevitable issue of our trash. There are probably not enough coastal cleanups to clean up the illegal dumping, the lack of respect that we see everywhere with regard to how trash and people are behaving with regard to that trash. And one of the major complaints is that people don't have money to properly dispose of their trash. Senators, what options do you have to offer those who may not be able to pay for that trash? Anyone?
So, that's an interesting question. We're actually working on something right now, and that would help create a universal, we're thinking of a universal trash collection and recycling program. So we'll let you know as soon as possible when we introduce that bill.
Thank you. Would that involve increasing any fees or maybe redistributing fees that we currently collect?
It would involve a surcharge.
Okay.
If I could just say, that's one of the uses of the Recycling Revolving Fund that I was talking about earlier. The Recycling Revolving Fund is dedicated to picking up, and their priorities are used cars, white goods, tires, all those things that you see that are really making our island ugly. That's their priority. And then their second priority is things like beverage containers, plastics, and paper. But their first priority are those big ticket items and they are willing to fund the removal of these things. And I just think we have to keep a good eye on what they are doing and where these funds are going. So there are funds available. So I think, and I do also agree, the mayors are instrumental. They have a huge task. The Dedido mayor says that if she puts out bins, I ask her why the parks have trash. If she puts out bins, they get full within 1 hour or 2 hours, guaranteed. She'll haul them away. The same thing will happen, and they don't necessarily put out trash bins. But there's different ways we can structure the fees for trash. Part of it is you've got to fund the mayors to pick up as much as people were going to give them. I think we're just going to have to accept that because that hopefully they will do that at the very least. But also landowners, maybe restructuring. And I think Hawaii was describing in the conference yesterday how their fees are not structured the way ours are, where it's per like user, it's per landowner. And so maybe a hybrid of something like that to make sure that at least all the land, private land, is taken care of.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. I guess the response to that is if we do have a chance to go and pick up all the trash, where are we going to put it? We have about 1-2 years maybe left on the existing cell. Upwards of, as Senator Sabina Perez said, upwards of 30 to 40 million to build the next cell. The adding in and onto the dump is far outpacing any saving that we're getting by way of not putting the trash. So where are we going to put it?
So yeah, with the, I want to promote an aggressive recycling composting program, as well as a use of non-biodegradables in more creative ways. So I think that's what we're going to be working on. For sure.
And Jackie, I just want to jump in, and I understand that there's so many challenges, but I was just leaning over and talking to Senator Clinton about this, and I'm really actually very, very proud of our legislature. I think that for the first time in a really long time, we have people in our legislature that really care deeply about the environment. We are thinking about meeting these challenges every single day, and we're working together to try to figure out how we're going to move it forward. And we also really need your help. You all are the subject matter experts. If you have ideas, if you have suggestions, please reach out to us. We are so willing and ready to meet with you, and we want to be able to talk with our colleagues and get the support that we need to get bills to the governor that she can sign, and we can really move this train forward. But I do want to assure all of you that we really care about all of these things. That's a huge reason why I ran, why many of these people up here ran. And so put us to work. Let us know what it is that you want us to do. That's why we're here. And so I really just feel like so many of us care deeply about these issues, and we're really excited to be able to get a move on it and take action.
Thank you very much, Senator. All I wanted to do is open up to the audience if there are any other questions that anyone might want to raise to the Senator. You have them. So if there's a time to ask questions about sustainability, and it's not just in the environment, it's about our community, and it's about our way of living. All of those are part of sustainability. If there are any questions, we're more than happy to accept them from the floor. Young lady. Can you please identify? If you can identify yourself and ask the question.
I'm Kylie Baker, and I was wondering if when you say there's a legislation to ban plastic bags, is it all plastic bags or just like grocery bags?
Thanks, Kylie. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I want to let you know that legislation passed last year. It was signed into law by Governor Calvo, and so it will be a ban on all plastic bags, not just grocery bags. It's all retail bags, and it's in the legislation. I can send it to you and your mom, but it actually describes exactly the types of plastic. And it's pretty much everything. So we're encouraging people to use reusable only and paper.
Thank you.
And it takes effect in January.
I was going to say, while we're on that, because a number of other islands and states are also banning all plastic items, single-use convenience items, styrofoam as well, because all of those add to what's going into the dump. Are there plans to also offer legislation that will ban such things as plastic water bottles, such things as styrofoam containers?
Oh, so in my opening, I just mentioned that the Guam Legislature has taken a step to ban all styrofoam, and we won't be using any of the money that we get to pay for styrofoam, any kind of styrofoam containers or cups or anything else. So has EOG, so has GCC, and we're taking steps to include the entire government of Guam. And I know that entities like GHRA and others are also putting pressure on public entities and businesses to really do that. So I'm going to try to work it that way before we consider a ban and see how far we can get. I know that the distributors are also pretty much on board. It's just, it's going to take a little while, and there's a cost associated with all of those things. So the more that we have these conversations, I think we're moving in the correct direction.
The cost is certainly something to consider, but it's also the cost of what our island looks like, and it's also the cost of continuing to fill up the dump. So while it's nice to work with the distributors and such, certainly an island-wide ban might be considered. Senator Hope Castrobel. Senator Sabina
Yes.
Perez.
So I was in conversation with EPA the other day, and so what I was told is that they bring the waste here for holding, but not for disposal. So it eventually gets shipped off to another point and disposed of in another point, I believe in the U.S., where there's a site that's permitted to take those type of waste. Regarding the waste from the military, yes, you're. My understanding too is that the ships that come in, they actually have Unitech control some of that waste. As far as the other waste, I know they use our landfill too as well. So yes, they're going to be part of the partners. I think, in my thinking, my approach to this is I want to work towards zero waste. And, that entails some mandates from the government. It also entails incentivizing businesses to come up with their own zero waste plans, so that really empowers them. And so we are creating a framework, a structure for that.
Yes, ma'am. Brent.
Hello. Good to see you here and participating. A few years ago, one of you was here and got so excited she announced, I'm going to pass a bill that'll ban plastic, and she did. So thank you, Regina. So Guam used to have an energy code a few years back. The legislature requested that the Building Code Council make it more for Guam, tailored for Guam, which we did, and we submitted to the governor. It passed the legislature with a unanimous vote. The governor vetoed it, and these last couple of years has sat on it. So we have reintroduced it to the new governor administration. They're reviewing it. Once we get their blessing, we're going to come back to the legislature, and we're going to try to pass it again. So my question is, not who's going to author it, but how many of you are going to co-author our new Guam Tropical Energy Code?
Let's take a look at it, and I will absolutely consider doing both of those things.
Thank you.
Senator Perez.
Yeah, read first.
We got to read it first.
I did want to say to an earlier comment, if I could, and we're seeing this already, that there are these shifts that we're going to have to make. Some of it's hard. Change is often hard. We get set in our ways and so forth. But we have these young, budding entrepreneurs that are wanting to make a difference. And so I see so many opportunities, and I think if they put their minds to it, that they will be coming up with some solutions. For example, we can be rethinking our whole Bulutan approach. We can be having bamboo containers, Tupperware containers that are at least multi-use, something to that effect. We have banana leaf straws that are available. I know that there are reusable straws. So I think bit by bit, we are challenging these issues. And I just want to encourage people to continue going down that path because, as Senator Perez and others have mentioned, we absolutely have to. We have limited land. We don't want another cell. China is closing its doors. We need to take a hard look at what's coming into our island. We need to take a hard look at our own lifestyles and be willing to embrace and encourage others to embrace those changes as well.
Thank you. We'll end up with a lightning round. One word, or just one sentence. It's Earth Month, and Earth Day is the 22nd. What one thing are you changing in your life for Earth Month? Vice Speaker.
I'm going to be even more bolder.
Okay.
No, I think we need to, well, that's not one word, but there's things that we haven't been able to talk about today, and that is, besides implementing new policy, we have all got to be on board when it comes to protecting what we already have. We have some of the most beautiful and precious aquifer and natural resources. We've got to protect access to those, and we've got to protect the ability. Without access, we cannot sustain ourselves. So that's another very critical factor.
Thank you. Senator Perez.
It's a tough one. I think what you're asking is, what can I change personally?
You personally.
To make sure that it adds up to a collective effort. One of the things that I think is important is bringing my own reusable containers. I think that would be very helpful. I know we don't have a ban on styrofoam, but that would definitely help in diminishing that waste. Sorry, that was over one sentence.
Okay, thank you. Senator Marsh Titano.
So I could do it in one word if I can say ditto. But I guess it would be just looking for more of those bamboo alternatives. Bamboo is, one sentence. Okay, bamboo alternatives there.
Thank you. Senator Torres.
I'm going to stop using those heavy industrial cleaners and products at the house and just get more to, elbow grease and cleaning more often, like every single day.
DIY. Senator Lee.
I'm looking for co-conspirators. So if anybody wants to jump on board and get something done, give me a call, shoot me an email. My email is senatorBiscoeLee@guamlegislature.org.
Thank you. Senator Ridgell.
I'm going to ban my household from using plastic water bottles.
Bravo. Thank you very much, senators.